Hi and welcome everyone. We are here with Bookish Bites, and we're here with Bookish Bites. We are Bookish Bites, and we're here with author Laura Vosika. I said that right?
Vosika.
Vosika? Vosika.
Yeah.
And
Uh-huh.
she is the author of the what's it? Blue Bells of
Bluebell's
Scotland? Did I?
Chronicles. Yeah, the
Blue
first
Bells
book is Bluebells
Chronicles.
of Scotland. The whole
Blue
series
Bells
is
of
Bluebell's
Scotland.
Chronicles. Yeah.
So tell us about your book. I know there's
Well,
time travel, which got my attention.
it's time travel to Scotland. So I was very fortunate. I had never actually heard of Diana Gabaldon when I wrote the book. And as people started reading it, she happened to be very popular at the time. So I got a big boost from her.
Oh,
So thank you,
oh,
Diana.
that's
So
great.
it's the tale of an obnoxious, arrogant trombone player. He plays professionally in a symphony orchestra. He's very young, very talented, and he's got a great business sense. As a result, he's made this orchestra extremely successful, but he's also just not a nice guy. He's a womanizer. He's a partier. All these, he just makes life miserable for a lot of people. At the
Yeah.
same time, he's made the orchestra very successful. And so his girlfriend finally has enough. And when they're on tour in Scotland, she abandons him in a medieval tower. She snaps like, I've had it with you. You are so self-centered, and I thought I saw something better in you, but I guess all these people telling me I didn't. I have to
Yeah.
agree, they're right. So she walks off, she leaves him, and he wakes up in the wrong century. He wakes up in medieval Scotland in the days just before Scotland's greatest battle in history, their Battle of Bannockburn, where they won about 5,000 Scots. It's so long ago that we don't really know exactly, but the best guess is
Oh,
about
wow.
5,000 Scots against 20,000 English. Now, to make it even more imbalanced, the Scots rode, I wish my dog were in the house. My dog's almost as
Ah,
big as the little ponies they rode. They were called Garons,
oh,
and they're
wow.
extinct now. But these
Mm.
Garons that the Scots rode were not much bigger than today's ponies. And they typically would only have, in fact, they only had leather armor,
Mm.
and they were fighting against the English, who had these massive Percheron war horses, fully clad in iron, steel armor, whatever the metal was, the
Wow.
lances, the whole works. And so this was a vastly imbalanced battle. And see, I'm so excited about the history of warfare and killing people that I'm kind of forgetting to tell you about the book. But this is the time Sean finds himself in. And to complicate matters, he's found in the tower by two of the medieval women of the castle, and they think that he's someone named Neil Campbell. His name is Sean, but they think he's someone named Neil Campbell. And so he's dragged down to the laird, and turns out Neil Campbell was supposed to go on a cross-country mission to find the laird's brother, who's been hiding in the woods from the English, and
Oh,
raise more
wow.
troops for the Battle of Bannockburn. So here's Sean, who's a terrible womanizer, and the laird's daughter, who is Neil's betrothed, sneaks onto this journey with him. So here's Sean, the womanizer, alone with a very comely young woman in the wilderness. And it's the wilderness. He doesn't realize it's not modern times. He thinks he's with reenactors. And so he tries his old tricks, and she stabs him. And
I love it.
bit by bit, yeah, he starts to figure out. They end up at an inn where the innkeeper has a beautiful daughter, and he tries his tricks with the daughter and finds a pitchfork in his chest. And so bit by bit, he starts to realize, I'm not in my own century. These people are for real, and they'll really kill me. And
Wow.
so throughout book one, he starts to really make a lot of changes as he realizes my choices impact other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the end of the book, something very dramatic happens. And my sister read it and said, "What happens next?" And I thought, well, he died. And I went back and I read it and thought, well, I didn't actually say he died. So what if what if he survived? What if he
What if he
survived?
didn't? Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so I wrote what happens next is he's caught in medieval Scotland and he and Neil are now together. Neil ended up, he was also asleep in the tower, so he ended up in the modern era,
Oh,
kind of caught
yes.
in Sean's life. And everybody thinks that Neil is Sean. And they've reached an end point and they tell Neil, who they think is Sean, "You are either going to play this last orchestra or we are going to fire you." Well, being from 1314, Neil is like, "Oh, I can't play a trombone." And to him, it's called a sackbut. That's the medieval version.
Oh.
And they're going to light me on fire and burn me at the stake if I don't. So he does play harp. And so he plays a concert on harp. But in the meantime, he's researching history and he's having to overcome all the antagonism that Sean has earned and get these people to want to help him. And he reads this history that Scotland lost at the Battle of Bannockburn. And so he's highly motivated to get back to his own time and save his
Mm-hmm.
people and turn the battle around. And he figures out what went wrong. So there's a little bit of alternate history in this. And he figures
Oh,
out, and I
wow.
based this all, yeah, I based it all on historical facts, looking at the actual battle and the movement of troops and where the archers were and all of this, and thought, well, what could have gone wrong that Scotland would lose that Neil could come back and fix? And
Yeah.
so it's the entire story arc. It's a 3-part arc, although it ended up in 5 books because parts 2 and parts 3 were just too long. But it's the
Mm-hmm.
3-part arc of what happens to begin with, caught in medieval Scotland, and what happens when he gets
And
home. And same with Neil. So I had a lot of fun writing all their adventures
oh,
in
that
it.
no, it sounds like a lot of fun. And see, I love history. I love researching history. So I think it's cool that because it kind of reminds me, and I cannot remember the name of this poem. I think it's called Ballad of the oh my gosh. It's the one where it says bombs to the right of us, bombs to the left of us. I can't remember. I can't remember the exact poem. It's
I'm
an old poem. You know which one
okay.
I'm
I'll have
talking
to look
about?
that up. I'm thinking of the
It's
song "Jokers to the right of me, jokers to the left. Here I am stuck in the middle with
it's
you."
an all right. It's an old poem, and I know that it was a battle that took place. I think it was in Eastern Europe. I'm not sure,
Okay.
but it was similar where they didn't have very many soldiers, and they were
Mhm.
going up against a lot of soldiers. They ended up winning. What did they win? I can't remember if they won or not. But
Mhm.
basically the poem was saying like, like there's bombs to the left of us, there's bombs to the right of us, but like they are determined to get through this. And it was one of my literature, it wasn't history, it was actually a literature class that we
Okay.
had to research this poem and learn
Mhm.
about it, and we had to connect it with a song. And I fell in love with the poem because
Mhm.
when you sit there and you analyze and you go through all these details and learning, just it's actually a beautiful thing,
Right.
but it reminds me when you talk about the war, that's what it reminds me of. They did not have
Mhm.
a lot of soldiers left. They didn't have a lot of resources, but they still like they went to their death. They didn't care. they,
Mhm.
they they were like, we're just gonna do this. But it was I can't remember where it was. It wasn't an actual. It was a real war
Mhm.
in history. I just can't remember between which countries. I
Yeah.
can't. Remember. Yeah,
I'll have to
once
look
you
that up. Not
graduate, you drop it.
right, right. That's
Yeah,
funny. I have
yeah,
all these notebooks from years ago. And because my grandparents were raised in the Depression, that comes down through the
yeah,
generations. And I'm like, there
yeah.
are 100 perfectly good pages. So I've got all these stacks of notebooks, but then I use them
Wow.
for other things, to keep lists and notes. And so I just found all my notes from my college, was it
Oh
literature
wow.
poetry class? And so I was
Yes.
reading my essay recently on, was it Wordsworth and Blake, I think, and Songs of
Yes,
Innocence, I
yes,
think is the poem.
yes.
That was kind of cool.
Yeah, it was fun. And I had a really great professor. So I think
Mhm.
that made it a lot more fun because, when they're passionate about what they're teaching, it's
Yeah,
contagious. So
yeah,
yeah,
I
she
think you're
was really
right.
good.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I was lucky to have, I think my last few semesters, I had all my professors were good, but they were really good. Like the last few ones I had were passionate about what they taught. And
Mhm.
that was great, and at the same time, I was taking history too, so, everything kinda collides together,
It
but
all fit
yeah.
together. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's wonderful. That's what it reminds me of that poem, and I really wish I regret I don't remember the name of the poem, but it's a poem that's been recited a lot in different movies and stuff, like, people will
Mhm.
know, like, the beginning part, they just won't know the rest of it. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah.
So did you major
So
in, history or literature?
no, ironically, you think that I would because I love writing.
Mhm.
I'm majoring in well, now I'm majoring in film production. I just did
Oh,
general
wow.
studies back then.
Mhm.
But now I'm doing film production and I'm doing biochemistry. So
That's
take
quite
the
a
two majors.
combination.
Yeah. My biology professor is like, "Well, maybe you could film animals or film." I was like,
Film
"I'm
cell
filming something."
splitting.
Yeah,
Right,
something's getting
right.
filmed. So, but yeah, I've always loved film for my books, and because
Mhm.
I want to see them. Like I could see your series into a movie. That could definitely. It could even be a really great Netflix series. You know.
Right.
So
And
yeah,
I
it's
was I was trying to, pursue that for a while and, mostly got no answers and, I'm a little cynical, like, can you only get your stuff made into movies if you have connections? I don't know.
I know. Well, no, okay, so what I've been told is okay, so for a book has to get you have to get something like 100,000 sales in 1 year to get
Oh,
their
in 1 year.
attention
Okay.
because in
Mhm.
1 year. So what happens is when you do that, that tells them that people are interested. So that gets the
Mhm.
attention of like movie producers because now
Mhm.
they can say, okay, well, this has a following, this has a crowd. It has,
Mhm.
100,000 plus people who I think it's 100,000 or is it a million? It could be a million. I might be wrong on the numbers. It might be a
A
million.
million's pretty
Yeah.
high for 1 year.
A million isn't really high, yeah. It's something I know is I heard the number and I was like, "Well, that might as well be a million, so that could be where it's coming from."
Right. Yeah,
But
yeah.
it could be 100,000, it could be a million, I'll have to double check. But you have to do it within a year, and then you could start, um talking to producers, showing
Mhm.
them, your book, and everything, and if they
Mhm.
like it, if they see the vision in it, then
Mhm.
they can take it on, and what they do is they start raising the money
Okay.
to produce it. Because it does cost a lot. I mean, it depends
Right.
on how you want it to be good. You don't want it to be a B movie, you really don't want
Right,
it to be a
right.
B movie.
Well, I find that
You really want,
interesting
yeah.
because I also run a small publishing press, and one of the
Okay.
authors I published, his book actually was optioned for a movie, and
Oh, wow.
I'm the publisher, so I know there were
Yeah.
not 100,000 sales.
Yeah.
As hard as I've pushed this book, I'm just, I'm a very small publisher. I'm one person,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
as hard as I've pushed his book because it's really a fantastic book, there are not
Mhm.
100,000 sales, much less in 1 year.
Really?
And so, I don't know. I'm guessing that he knows someone who has connections. That's
Well,
my
like
guess.
like the saying goes, there's, more than one way to skin a cat, just to say no harm
Right,
to cats, but
right.
just saying that now,
Right.
yeah.
No
Just
cats
that
were
was my
harmed
next
in
point.
this
Yeah, no harm to
interview.
cats. I just say there is other ways because that's one way. But
Mhm,
another way is for example, like I know people who are film producers.
mhm,
I have a cousin actually who has his own film production company. And so like I'm already planning, even though I'm taking film production and that's my pursuit, I'll still go to him.
Uh-huh.
But
Uh-huh.
at least I'll understand it, but I will still go to him.
So I'm just
But
curious, is that a little bit like a doctor doesn't treat themselves and a lawyer doesn't represent themselves? Is that why you would do that?
well, no, because I'm still me learn he's been in it for a longer time than I
Okay.
have. So I feel like,
Okay.
you can go to college and you learn, but until you really
Mhm.
apply it. And if like
Yep.
for my first view, I would want him to I'd be with him because I I want to understand,
Mhm.
but at least I'll understand the lingo, but the experience, I don't have the experience. He has the
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I've already listened to him and some of his ideas and some of my books, just giving him snippets, and I love his concept. And I guess
Mhm.
that's the creativity with a producer going with different producers. So
Right.
my vision, I may be great at writing a book and I may understand the whole concept of film production, but I don't know yet because I haven't gotten there. I may not be as
Mhm.
creative as somebody else in film production. So
Right.
that it's like they have their different style, just like writers. And I always tell people, if all these writers could get together, we could all write the story of Cinderella. It's all going to be different. you know,
Everyone. That's
Everyone is going to be different. Yeah.
that's
Everybody's going
funny
to have their own
because
twist.
when I was 10, I started writing my first novel,
Oh,
and
wow.
it was gonna be a great story, and it was about Timmy, who I believe was
Mhm.
about 6 or 7, and you're gonna
Mhm.
recognize this story, even though I never finished it. Timmy gets kidnapped, and Timmy is such a little terror that the kidnappers try to give him back, and the parents don't
Oh,
want him
wow.
back. And
Oh
so
my
just by
god.
dumb luck, I happened to go up. I had about 10 pages of this great novel written, and I was 10. Went upstairs,
Mhm.
looked at my mom's bookshelf, and I saw The Ransom of Red Chief. And I went, darn,
Oh
he beat me to it.
my gosh.
So I quit
Yeah.
writing it, because at the age of 10, I was
Oh,
precocious enough to be trying to write a novel, but not so
yeah.
much as to realize I can write the same story and it will be
No,
completely
yeah.
different.
It'll be completely different. Your
Mhm.
perspective and your take on it is gonna be very different. I would actually like to try that as an experiment. Everybody write, Cinderella and
Right.
and
Well,
just,
what it comes back to is this idea that there are depends who you read, but there are only
yeah.
36 storylines ever told, or
Yeah.
some might, I
Yeah.
forget if some say 72. And there are different ways of parsing it. Some boil it down to three, man against man against nature, and man against self.
Yeah.
But those who
Yeah.
expand it, like there is the kind of Oedipal story, there is the betrayal story. And it's
Yeah.
really interesting when you read
It's such
those
a twist.
and
Yeah.
start sorting all these stories
Yeah.
and realize they're right.
Yeah, they're right. It's just like I just finished doing my latest book was called Toxic: The Double Cross. It's
Mhm.
actually a part of a series. So I did this book with 7 other women, and the theme was a toxic relationship. And what
Mhm.
I thought was amazing is we all had our different version. We all had our
Mhm.
different version, our different inspiration of you know, what we saw as toxic and just how the story went. So I thought that was kind of like the Cinderella, you know?
Yeah, it kind of is. Is
Mhm.
this a collection of short stories? Is it like an anthology?
It's not an anthology. I thought it was an anthology too. It was not an anthology. They call it a series. But
Mhm.
my book, we all have the same title, different subtitles. Um
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That sounds
And then
interesting.
yeah, and then the book cover is a different color. It's all the same
Mhm.
image, but different colors.
Okay.
And it's actually really beautiful because like I had picked, well, my the color I wanted was turquoise because I'm a big turquoise fan. But
Mhm.
that was taken pretty quick. So I was like, you know what? Rose gold popped into my head. I was like, oh, rose
Mhm.
gold. It turned out beautiful. Another lady
That's
had
neat.
picked green. It looks so pretty. Like when you line the books up, just all these
Uh-huh.
different, and they're all like a metallic color. It was beautiful. It's beautiful. It's a really, and I just think like it was a really great project because it really did kind of has my Cinderella
Here's
theory that we could all
here's
write.
my dog I was talking about. See how
Oh,
big she is?
wow. Wow,
Are
she
you
is
gonna say
big.
hi? Yeah, this is can you smile for
Oh
the
my
camera?
gosh, she's tall.
Yeah, I'm 5'6", and now she
Oh,
won't do it anymore because
oh, sh
she's 10 and a half, and her breed on
oh, her
average only lives 6 to 8 years. But when
oh,
she was
yeah.
younger, if
That's
I
good
could
though.
get her to stand on her hind legs, she'd be looking down at me. So
Oh my
she's,
gosh.
yeah, and I'd say the Garons that they rode were maybe,
A little bit of
maybe 8 to 10 inches
really?
taller than her. I'm guessing no more than that. Yeah, and in fact, the
Wow.
reason I own her, the reason I have her, I looked for an Irish Wolfhound, is because I
Mhm.
try to live everything in my books, to obviously, I can't
Yeah,
time
to
travel or,
experience it.
go out and fight
Yeah.
people and kill people because that would just be wrong.
Yeah.
But I have the medieval weapons. I'm wondering, can you hand me the claymore?
Oh,
So I have the medieval weapons. This is our
I love
claymore.
that.
Yeah.
I
Ugh.
can definitely relate to that. Oh, yeah.
And we
That's heavy,
have
huh?
it's well, I believe if I remember correctly, it's about 8 pounds. And then we
Wow.
have our battle axe. Now,
Wow.
this was Robert the Bruce's favorite weapon, and he was
Oh,
very, very good
he's
with
good
it.
with it.
So, the saying, truth is stranger than fiction.
Yes.
I need a volunteer here to demonstrate. There's an amazing story about the Battle of Bannockburn. No, you go away. I'm not demonstrating on you. It's my imaginary person. So there
Right?
was a moment at the beginning of the battle, the first day of the Battle of
Mhm.
Bannockburn, in which he's moving along. Watch out for the sword pup. He's marching along on his little Garon with nothing but leather to protect himself. And across the
Yeah.
field is a young English knight. He's, I'm going to guess, maybe 20, 21. In that day and age, you were
Yeah.
well into adulthood by that age, but he
Yeah,
was still
yeah.
pretty young. And his name
Yeah.
was Henry de Bohun. And he decided, there's the King of Scots. I recognize the gold band. I'm going to win this moment of glory by charging because he's not paying any attention. So Robert the
Mhm.
Bruce turns, he's got his battle axe, and he just watches and watches as Henry de Bohun charges on this massive war horse with his lance pointed straight at him. And at the last minute, Robert the Bruce just twitched the reins, edged the Garon aside, stood up in his stirrups, and slammed this down. It cleaved through a
Ooh.
helmet all the way down into his chest. And that's through a metal
Ooh.
helmet. So it's a remarkable
Ooh.
story. And his men, of course, were not happy with him and chastised
No.
him greatly. I have my assistant here handing me things. His men were
Oh.
very unhappy with him and chastised him and said, what if we'd lost our king of the Scots, before the
Mm.
battle even starts? And Robert the Bruce
Yeah.
said, I have broken my good axe. And that was his only concern. But it was an amazing moment, in part because it was
That
such an
is.
incredible morale booster for his men.
Yeah.
And they were already highly motivated because if the English break through, all their wives and children are going to be slaughtered. So, they were pretty
Yeah.
motivated.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, that's good motivation.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that is crazy. And I love that you really dive deep into your research because that's
Mhm.
something that I do. I don't get to do it as much as I would like to, but there's,
Mhm.
some things you can't like time travel. Like you said.
Right, right. Well, to make up for things like that, what I did was, for instance, my brother-in-law was not really, well, kind of a reenactor. He was involved in SCA, which is the Society for Creative Anachronism. And
Oh,
so
okay.
he had these sort of medieval outfits, including medieval boots. So on my first trip to
Oh.
Scotland, I took his boots and I marched up and down hills just like Sean
So
does
you could feel
in
it.
my
It feels like it. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so that's kind
Yeah.
of how I went about trying to research what it might have been like to live in that time.
Wow, that is nice. So you actually went to Scotland?
Yeah, I've been there 5 times. And so
Nice.
yeah, what I have typically done is I write the book, like,
Mhm.
first, second, third draft. Then I go over there, I plot out the trip and try and hit most or all of the places that are in the book.
Love it.
And so, for instance, in the first book, the orchestra is playing at, I believe it's called Eden Court Theater. I mean, it's been like 12, 13 years since I went there now, but I think it's called Eden Court Theater.
Mhm.
And I I was bold enough to go to the theater, find someone in charge and say, I'm writing a book. The orchestra is here. Would you take me on a tour and show me backstage, show me the green room, show me everything? And her name
Yeah.
was Judith. And she said, and I was really scared because, like, I didn't have a published book. I'm wondering, is she going to laugh at
Mhm.
me or what? Like, you're not a real author. But she was really nice. And she said, I would love to, but I can't because Prince Andrew is due here in 15 minutes. But if you come back tomorrow,
Oh.
I will. And
Oh,
so
wow.
I went back the next day after Prince Andrew got his tour. I got my tour the next day, and she did take me
Nice.
through all the back halls. And so when you read the book and you read about the white cinder block walls, that's what's there. And so, yeah, I tried to
Wow.
go to every place in the book and try and
Yeah.
really get it right.
So it's yeah, that way the reader feels like they're there, which is,
Mhm. And
that's
one thing I'm really pleased with, it paid off because I've had a couple of readers who are Scottish from Scotland
mm.
tell
Wow.
me they don't typically like books set in Scotland written by Americans because they said too often they get things wrong. And
Mhm.
they read my books. Like one of them, her name was Elaine. She has since passed on, unfortunately, but we became friends.
Mm.
She invited me to come and visit her. And I thought she was another author. I didn't know she was a reader. And I got there and she's like, nope, I bought your book because it was on sale for 99 cents or 99p probably. And I thought I couldn't
Yeah.
go wrong. And she said, usually I don't like books set in Scotland by American authors, but you got it right. And she just loved my
Wow.
books. And I ended up actually going back to have dinner with her another time. And
Oh.
I did go back for her memorial service too,
Oh, yeah.
because we had become friends. And she showed me, this is the bench where I sat to read your book for the first time, and made me dinner while I hiked up to Castle Campbell that
Ah.
was above her house. So it was really neat, and all a
That is
result of doing the
cool.
research. Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. You get to, the reader got to meet the author of a book. I love
Yeah,
that. Vice versa, it's cool, both
right.
sides.
Well, and I've
Oh.
experienced it on both sides because one of the times I was in Scotland, one of my favorite childhood books was called, still is called, In the Keep of Time. And I read
Mm.
it back like 1975, maybe. And it's about four
Mhm.
children who go into Smailholm Keep, which is it's near Kelso, Scotland. And they come out in the
Mhm.
wrong time. So obviously that was a little bit of an
Oh.
influence, although my book is very different.
Yeah.
Um, and so I went to Smailholm with my husband, and I was telling one of the guys there, one of the employees, about this wonderful book. And he said to me, oh, that's so neat. Do you think you could, talk to Margaret Anderson, the author, and ask her if she'd sell it? And in retrospect, I'm like, I'm not the employee. Why did you ask me to do that? And I'm thinking too, she wrote this book like 40, 50 years ago. But I thought, okay, well, I'll try. And so I looked online, and lo and behold, she had a website. She had been reissuing the books. And
Wow.
I think at that time she was in her 80s. And so I talked to her about this and kind of put them in touch with each other. And later on, I sent her an email, and I thought I was being so clever. I said, she actually lives in the United States now. And so I said,
Oh, okay.
if I happen to be in your city, could I take you out to lunch? And she saw right through it. And she invited me to her house for lunch. And so She's amazing. She lives on acreage and she's got this massive, huge garden with just a million vegetables.
Oh,
And so
wow.
she invited me to her house and she kept going, I can't believe you drove all this way to meet me. I'm like, oh, no, I lied to you. I told you I was just going to happen to be in the area. But she saw right through it. And so I got to
Oh.
interview her on my podcast, Books and
Yeah.
Brews, too. So
Okay,
it's been
okay.
really neat
Oh, that's
to meet
cool.
someone who wrote one of my favorite books.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That is cool. So what do you have planned next for your books?
Well, let me see. I finished the five books that we have that are in the series. Um, this goes with this series. It's actually not a cookbook where it relays some of the scenes and then gives
Oh, okay.
recipes, including medieval recipes. And
Oh, that's cool.
so this will probably come as a surprise to most people, like it did to me. 4 and 20 blackbirds baked in a pie, and when the pie was open, the birds began to sing. They actually knew how
Mhm.
to do that. They knew how to
Oh,
bake a
really?
pie that had live birds in it that flew out when you open the pie. So that
Oh,
recipe is in
wow.
here. Yeah, and then I wrote a book with my husband, and we have one or
Oh,
two more that we're working on. This
okay.
one is about a little boy who's either very imaginative or having something very miraculous happen. And it's
Oh,
actually set in a historic mansion on Summit Hill in St. Paul, Minnesota, that we visited once. And something in the basement reminded us or made us think of the
of
saint
the
in the cellar. And so every year I put out an anthology of new
Mhm.
poetry in traditional forms. So I'm
Mhm.
working on the fifth and sixth copies of that now, which are Music and Faith. And then beyond
Okay.
that, I'm because I don't like to do just one thing at a time, I'm actually putting
Yeah.
together a cookbook of meals made with rabbit meat because we breed
Oh,
rabbits here
really?
on our farm. Yeah, we breed New
Oh.
Zealand white rabbits. And so
Oh,
right now we
wow.
have little bunnies, 8 of them. They're up to about that big now, and they're the cutest things
Oh,
you'll ever see. They're
you're
just
cute.
adorable. But my main kind of next big project is it's called the Ivy League series, and it is
Mhm.
about a relatively young widow. She's maybe 38, 39, and she has a 16-year-old son named River, and they
Mhm.
travel the country getting it. She's a mystery writer, or at least she's trying to be a mystery novelist. And so as they
Mhm.
travel the country for various things, they keep getting embroiled in mysteries. And so the fun of
Ah.
this series is we take incidents from our own lives and we take
Mhm.
road signs. And so it started because when one of my sons was 16, we were driving home from the Amelia Island Book Festival in Florida, where I had been showing my books and selling them.
Yeah.
And I was sick, and it's a long drive home from Florida to Minnesota. I think it was about a 24-hour
Yeah.
drive.
Yeah, that's a
And
long
so it
drive.
was, yeah, it was 10 at night. We were in Alabama. I needed chicken noodle soup. I just didn't feel well. And my son didn't have his permit yet, so he couldn't help me drive. We stopped
Mm.
at an IHOP, and he ordered steak, and I ordered chicken noodle soup. He got his
Mhm.
steak like in, I don't know, 5, 10 minutes. 20
Wow.
minutes went by, and the waitress came out and said, "We don't have any chicken noodle soup." And I was almost seething like, why did it take
What?
you 25 minutes to tell me that? And so my son has ever since, every time we pass an IHOP, he's like, "Look, mom, there's your favorite restaurant."
That's
But
right.
I started thinking, well, what's going on in that kitchen that it took them 20, 25 minutes to tell me they
To
don't
tell
have
you that.
soup? So, of course, I realized, with my writer's brain, that there were all sorts of shenanigans going on in the back, and mystery and murder and mayhem and jealousy. And so it's meant to be a kind of tongue-in-cheek detective series, but there
Yeah.
are also some serious elements, like about the mother and son and their
Mm-hmm.
relationship and how they work together, and how they're dealing with the loss of their husband and father. So,
Oh.
but then the other fun part of these series is we take the character names off road signs. So we're driving through, I think it was in Alabama, and on the top, the sign points to a town called Jemison. And
Mm,
on the bottom, the other sign points to a town called Thorsby. And we looked at that and went,
mm.
Jemison Thorsby? That sounds like a Southern lawyer. So now he is. And
Yeah.
there's another sign that's Ava Faulkner. So Ava Faulkner is now in the book. And
Yeah.
so every time
I
we
love
take road
that.
trips, we're writing down all the
Yeah, you
road
right there.
signs. There
I
is
like
in
that.
Wisconsin, yep, Dane and DeForest. So now we have a character named Dane DeForest, and all kinds of fun people are coming off these road signs.
That's funny. That's funny. And you know what's funny is I used to be a restaurant manager,
Oh,
and
really?
I can yes, I can tell you. I can tell you the things that go on in the back kitchen, yeah. But yeah, in
Has
that case,
anybody
yeah,
been
as a
murdered though?
no, not in my
No.
experience. I haven't experienced that. No.
Let's
No,
hope
I
it
haven't
stays that way.
let's hope
Yeah.
it stays that way. I've seen some drama though. It's kind of funny, kind of not. Sometimes it's not funny. But yeah,
Yeah,
I know
I
as a
I
manager,
used
I
to
would be
work
pretty pissed.
yeah, I used to work at a country club, and that was interesting. I found out chefs are very interesting people, at least at that country club. And so one thing they liked to do was the kind of kitchen area was here. Then there was the walkway where the waitresses came through and the busboys to grab food and bring back dirty dishes. And then the dish area was over here. Well, the chefs didn't like to walk their dirty dishes over to the dish cleaning area. They would literally throw the knives, and they would
Oh,
shout and throw a knife across this
oh
walkway.
my
And
gosh.
I forget if they had like a word they shouted. I don't know if they shouted for or something like that. And they would toss
What?
clavers.
Oh
And
my gosh.
yeah, yeah, and looking back, it's like, wow, did they really do that? I can't have misremembered that, but I was walking in one day and I was shocked to suddenly see a cleaver fly. It
Flying
was
across
probably
your
a couple
phone.
it was probably a couple feet away. It's not like it shaved off my hair or
Yeah.
anything like that, but I was like, wow, is
Oh,
this safe?
no, 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 that's not safe.
Not really. Yeah.
No, that's not safe. Wow, that's amazing. So I'm yeah, your story is amazing. I love your writing style. I love how you do
Well,
your
thank you.
research and you really get into it. Yeah, that makes all the difference. I'm a very passionate writer. I get deep into my stories when I'm writing them. The characters really
Mhm.
come alive to me. So for me,
Yep.
it's like they're like real people to me. It's crazy to
I
say.
get that. Even now, like I can't call Sean and Neil characters. It's like they're
Yeah,
not characters,
they're
they're
real.
people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, it always feels like that to me. That is amazing. I love what you're doing. And so you're a small publisher.
Mhm.
How long have you been a small publisher?
Let's see. I started in 2009, and
Mhm.
the way it actually came about was that I was in a group called Night Writers in Minnesota for 13 years, a writers critique group that meets every
Mhm.
week. I have since moved to Tennessee, and thanks to technology, I'm back to attending their meetings every week.
Yeah,
So,
there you go.
yeah, my friend Dee brings her laptop and I sign on Google Meets, and
Yeah,
I'm sitting
there
here
you go.
and I can see the room full of people. But
Nice.
the reason this started was it was a group of really quite good writers, and they've produced
Mhm.
some really, really good books on just all genres. You know, we have some very paranormal sorts of things. We have some kind of fun, fluff, adventure, romance type things. We have
Yeah.
Ross writes mysteries, and we tease him mercilessly that the women always get killed. Even the female dogs die in his books.
Oh my
And,
gosh.
and the
Yeah.
joke of it is, yeah, the joke of it is Ross is like the nicest, gentlest guy ever. And we're like, Ross, what's your thing about women, you know?
Yeah.
Um, so so I and one other member who was newer at the time, we decided we've got all these great books. The other member was named Jack, and he had been looking into publishing and self-publishing. And he was telling us, you know, traditional publishing has really changed. You
Mm,
you could spend easily 5 or more years getting an agent and then getting a publisher, and then it's going to take maybe another year. You know, it could take you 10
yeah,
years to get your book published. They're going
it
to
does.
expect you to do 95% of your own marketing or more, and you're still only going to get, you know, what, 8, 10% of the royalties. And
Yes.
Mhm. And so, you know, he really talked us into this idea that you can upload your own book, you can do your marketing, which you're going to do anyway, but now you're getting
Mhm.
40% of the royalties, or I guess it's 60%. And
Yeah.
so, but in 2009, I think it's much less so now, there was still a
Mm,
huge stigma against self publishing. So we said, okay, we're going to set up a publishing company. We're going to give it a name. We bought the ISBNs. We created, I
mhm,
actually did most of it. We created the website, and
mhm,
now we all have a publishing name. We have an imprint. And so some of
mm,
them would take their books to local printers and print up a whole run. I chose the route of uploading to Amazon. And
mhm,
since we set that up, I just kind of by word of mouth had other people start coming to me and saying, will you publish my book too? And so we kind of started as a bit of a hybrid. And now it's, we sign a contract. I don't do advances
mhm.
because the sad fact is, you know,
Yeah.
it is partly because there are now millions of
Yeah.
books where there used to be
Yeah.
maybe 1 million. And
Yeah.
most people, I think most authors love writing, don't want to do the marketing. I can only do so much. So I do market their books as much as I'm
Mhm.
able to, but I publish these books knowing they're probably not going to recoup the cost. So it really kind of is a labor of love.
It
But
is.
I do
Yeah.
give them a contract, they get royalties. I don't charge at this point for publishing, and it gives me an incentive to market the books and see what
Yeah.
happens. And so
Yeah.
maybe one day I'll have like a massive bestseller,
Major
and you know,
company. Yeah.
I'm currently working on really actively building up my social media. I also do
Mhm.
my Books and Brews podcast. And
Okay.
so, you know, I've got all these different things kind of coming together that I'm building up social media for, and that will hopefully help market the books.
Yes, and everything you said there, I published my first book in 2009,
Mhm.
and I
Oh,
went
wow.
with a
Same here.
vanity publishing company. Yeah.
Mhm.
I went with a vanity publishing company. I knew nothing, nothing, nothing.
Mhm.
And I found out the day before the book was set to be released. I thought that I think I spent almost it was $3,000,
Mhm.
and I thought that it included editing. I thought, like, they were gonna take my book and make it
Oh,
pretty.
no. Uh-huh.
No, they yeah. Oh, no, it's right.
Oh, no. So it
They took my
kinda went
book
up?
as it is, yeah,
Mhm.
and they're like, "Oh, well, you if you, I don't know what it's like nowadays, now that I know what I know, I don't even know what I paid
Uh-huh.
for with them because I had to make my own book cover. I learned the day before it's set to be released that it's not gonna be edited, you know?
Wow.
And they're telling me to edit it was gonna be like 75 cents a word.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
Yeah, it was horrible. It was horrible. It was a horrible experience, but and I got so angry, like, so what I did is I said, well, maybe it won't go anywhere because nobody knows me. Lo and
Mhm.
behold, people read it and they're like, "Oh my god, this is horrible." Of course it's going to
Oh,
get bad reviews,
no.
you know?
Yeah.
So I was able to pull the book. They didn't even want to let me pull it. But I pulled the book and
Mhm.
I said, okay, I have to take, I gotta take, what is it, the horse by the reins. I
Right,
gotta figure
right.
this out.
Something like that.
Something, yeah, something like that. I started researching, publishing, and that's where I came across
Mhm.
self-publishing, like really understanding the difference. I thought it was a publisher company, and it turns out
Mhm.
I didn't even at that time I didn't even know what vanity publishing was. It's just I learned later on.
Mhm.
I thought they were just a publishing company. I learned out that they are, vanity publishing, and they explained it or whatever. I ended up calling around, and I that's when I got into. I don't know if you remember. They used to be called Book Search, and then they became
Not
Create
sure if I knew
Space.
about them. Oh,
Okay,
that's
so well,
Create
so
Space. Yeah, I know Create
yeah, I know.
Space.
Yeah, I know the whole history about them because I started when it was
Mhm.
Book Search, and they were
Okay.
in the process of switching over to Create Space, but at that
Mhm.
time they were still called Book Search. And I'll never forget the guy who I spoke to on the phone. He sat
Mhm.
there. He said, I told him what happened, and he said, you can do this on your own. He goes, the only thing you
Mhm.
probably can't do on your own is edit. And he says, but you
Mhm.
can learn how to do book covers. You could learn how to format your book. The well, like Create Space, you can, there's a forums. They can teach you how to make the blurb for your book. There's people who are more experienced who will take the time to actually on that forum work with you.
Right.
So I learned how to do everything in my
Mhm.
book, and and then I was just trying to find editors, and that was like the next mission because I learned that someone who proofreads is not an editor. And I didn't know
Mhm.
that. I thought like they were saying that they're an editor, but technically they're a proofreader. Because
Mhm.
an editor, there's different types of editors. You have your developmental
Right,
editing. You have
exactly.
all these different, yeah. And the last
Mhm.
thing you worry about is grammar. I didn't know this.
Mhm.
so so for me, like it's not until recently that and that's why I've been revamping all of my books. But it took me
Mhm.
years from 2009 to now to really understand all the aspects of publishing and writing
Right.
to where now I can revamp my books, and they're way better now, way better
Mhm.
now than what they were
Well, and see,
before.
I lucked out because Jack, who had joined our group, knew all of
Mhm.
this. And so
Yes.
right from the start, he was telling us this is the problem with traditional publishing, this is the
Yeah.
benefit of self-publishing. And there are definitely pros to traditional publishing, especially if you're the author they
Yeah.
decide to promote. But he told
Yes,
us
that's
all
the
of this,
thing.
and I
Yeah.
found Create Space, and they've now been taken over by KDP. So I use them
Yes.
in draft to
Mhm.
digital for my
Mm.
ebooks.
Yeah, I do draft to digital too also.
Yeah, I
I've
really like
recently
them.
got I like, yes, and they're all, self-published authors. I don't know if you know that the company that, yeah, I love it,
Um,
love it, love it, love it.
no, I didn't know they were all self-published authors. It
Oh,
doesn't
yeah,
surprise
it's
me.
authors. Well, okay, I wouldn't say they're all self-published. I don't know if they're all self-published, but they're all authors.
Mhm.
They're all authors. I do believe they're all
Right.
independent authors, though. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um
Well, I mean, technically, because I have an account there for my own books, but I have a Gabriel Sworn account for the
mhm.
authors I publish for. So technically, they're not indie published because
Mm.
I do a
Yeah,
lot
you
of the
know,
cover design for them. I do the
right.
editing for them. I do the formatting. So
And you have you have the imprint, so they're not traditionally, I mean, they're not self-published, they're traditionally published.
right.
Yeah, legally.
Hmm.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And that's wonderful because with that, they're able to get into a lot more, contests. I don't know, like
Yes.
the pub yeah, there's a I mean, they
Mhm.
have 2 more, but I think the better contests are for traditionally published books. So
I haven't really looked into that. I have to say, my first experience with entering my books in a contest, I came away from it kind of feeling like this is not, I felt like there were a lot of political choices being made as to who won. And I'm not going
Mm,
to go into details about that, but there was such a pattern that
yeah.
I ended up a little bit cynical and just like, why am I going to spend all this money? It would be really cool to have awards after my name, but
Yeah.
I don't know if it's worth it, you know. And again, in some ways, I've become very
Yeah.
cynical. So,
I have one friend, he's an author, and he what thing he told me, how he marketed his books was through
mhm,
putting them into different contests. And he said, and he's
okay,
self-published. And he
hmm,
said that he didn't do it for the award. He did
hmm,
it for uh not saying so much a recognition, all that stuff came afterwards. It was a
hmm,
way for him to get his book out there because you're
okay,
putting it
for the
in this, and all these
exposure.
judges have to look, yes, the exposure.
Okay.
And he's gotten his book into Barnes and Noble now.
Oh,
I think
wow.
they're in the
Okay.
process of turning one of his books into a movie. Yeah,
Oh, boy.
there's I
That's
think it's all
exciting.
in how you look at it. Yeah, it's all, see, there's
Mhm.
another route, right?
Right. Well, and
So it's
that's a good
all
way to
in
look
how
at
you
it.
look at it.
Right. And I
Yeah,
wish
yeah,
someone
he
had
didn't
said
go for
that
the
to me,
award,
you
yeah.
know, 13 years ago,
Yeah,
although
it's
I don't feel too
right?
bad because at the time I was working pretty much 18 hours a day between all of my kids were at home, so I'd get up at 6,
Yeah,
get them ready for school. I would do a little writing. I would go teach music lessons. I would
yeah.
get home, make them dinner, get them to bed, and write until 1 in the morning. And 6 the
Wow.
next morning, I would start again.
Ooh,
So when would I have had time to enter
time.
contests at that point?
No.
But I think that's great advice. And
Yeah,
maybe I would have used the time differently had it been
yeah.
presented to me that way.
Yeah, right. I mean, these are all things we learn on the journey, so what can
Right,
you
right,
do?
exactly,
Yeah,
which is the benefit of a
yeah,
program like this, that hopefully other
yeah.
people listen and get this great advice.
Exactly, exactly. I love that. There's a lot of things that I'm working on. There's a lot of things that I'm learning. Now I'm actually um publishing my book, doing like digital editions on Etsy.
Okay.
But
On
I love
Etsy?
it because I get to do a lot of different things. Yeah. Yeah.
How
So
does
I
that
make
work?
what I call
Like,
hybrid books.
okay.
So I do, for example, like I have a workbook, right?
Mhm.
And it's for characters. It's for developing your character, and I
Okay.
use a lot of AI imagery. So it's
Mhm.
also for creating the prompts to create your character. Like you
Okay.
try to keep them the same. That way you try. It's hard. It's very hard to keep them
Mhm.
consistent. But
Mhm.
I've noticed that once I save the prompt, and I'll
Mhm.
just keep putting that into the system and just, tweaking it. Like maybe she's standing and before she was sitting, she's
Mhm.
in a lab now or she's at a restaurant, and
Mhm.
but the character's image for the most part can stay similar so that the reader, because I make videos. So let me back it up a little bit. In my books, what I'm doing now is on my printed copies and the digital copies that I sell on Etsy, you can actually scan or actually it's a digital. So you click on it and it takes you to a video that'll read the chapter and play out the video
Oh,
for you
wow.
in a kind of animated, kind of like pictures. So that's
Mhm.
what I do, that's what I work on, and that's what I sell on Etsy, and then I also do workbooks, like, so it's a fillable workbook,
Okay.
and I like
That's
it because most of the
fascinating.
things I do, yeah, it's easier when you have your prompts because then you could just copy and paste, you know?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
whatever you write, or if you're working on the character parts, it's easier, I find it digitally because, I'm already on the computer anyway.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so that's what I've been doing recently. I've been having fun making those.
I'm
It's a
going to
lot of
have to
work.
look into that. Although, yeah,
Yeah,
it's a lot of work. We
it's a lot of work.
last August we moved to Tennessee and we've been in the
Mhm.
process of building up our homestead here. So I'm on
Oh.
this learning curve where 3 years ago I literally had never grown a head of lettuce or cared for anything other than kids, cats, and dogs. And so now I've
Right.
got a garden. I'm growing herbs. We have the rabbits, we have chickens, and we have sheep. And it's a lot of work.
Wow.
So we finally just hired someone starting last Friday,
To
and
help.
he's been taking over a lot of the kind of basic chores for me. He's
Mhm.
19 and he's been absolutely
Oh,
fantastic. And so
good.
it's finally freeing up a little time to get back to
To
marketing
what you
and writing,
yeah.
since I'm writing about 15 books at the same time right now, which
Right,
is not the
wow.
way to go.
Oh my gosh. Well, okay, well, tell everybody where can they buy your books?
Mostly, I think they're sold on Amazon, although you can order them at a brick and mortar store. You can get them at Barnes and
Mhm.
Noble. You can get
Nice.
them pretty much anywhere online, or you can go to lauravosika.com and you'll
Mhm.
find links to them. You can go to gabrielshorn.com and there's a drop down list of authors, and I will be under that too.
Okay, awesome, and if someone wants to publish under you, they go to your website
Mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
contact
And
you?
at this point, my time is very limited. It needs to be a good book for me to put my time into it.
It needs to
And,
be
everything I've published, I think, is a good book, and that's why I've published it.
Yeah, yeah, that's good.
But yeah,
That's wonderful.
gabrielshornpress.com is the publisher's website.
Gabriel'sWordPress.com. Okay, that's good to know. Well, we thank you all for coming in and watching Bookish Bites. We hope you enjoyed our show today. We hope you learned a lot because there was a lot of great information that just got passed around. So we hope that you can walk away with some good knowledge. And please check out Laura Vosika's book, Blue Bell Scotland. Did I say that right?
Bluebells of Scotland, yep, or the Bluebells
Bluebells of
Chronicles
Scotland.
is the whole
The Bluebells
series.
Chronicle, yes. I think they need to just get the whole series.
I'm in agreement, plus the cookbook. So,
Right, and the cookbooks.
right.
So we thank you for tuning